Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, on the occasion of Day Against Child Labour, we are going to shed light upon Charles Dickens' novel David Copperfield. Before we begin, ओए छोटू, दूध कड़े में चारा दो भैया जी के लिए. That छोटू needs to be taken care as child labour is one of the social problems that happens in our country which directly affects the psycho-physical development of a child, which causes problem in a nation development. Child labour affects 215 million children across the world and 115 million children who perform activity defined as the worst form of child labour. Broadly speaking, child labour constitutes work that robs children from their potential, their dignity and their future. Inequality, lack of education opportunities, tradition and cultural expectations all lead and contribute to the persistence of child labour in India. Our responsibility or our role as being educated people, we must take care of the fundamental rights of the children and their health and spread awareness among them for what is right and wrong for them. By doing this, we will surely create an environment which is happy for us, which is positive and which will surely bring happiness to our life. Before we start the novel, Charles Dickens' David Copperfield, there are few literary terms that I want you to keep in mind by reading the novel. The first is Bildungsroman. As Bildungsroman means, it's a Germanic term which means development through education. This term helped us to know the physical development and the mental development of a character from childhood, adolescence to his adulthood, how his journey has been and how because of that journey he becomes what he is. This is the first thing that you need to keep in mind. The second thing is Kunstenroman, which is similar to Bildungsroman. It is like, in the character of Charles Dickens, David Copperfield, we have the character David Copperfield, whose life is being narrated, and from childhood to adulthood, this development is called Bildungsroman. But if the same case happens in the case of an artist, like we have in James Joyce, a portrait of an artist as a young man, we have a life journey, a narration of a character's through becoming of what he is as an artist. As the life of an artist is being described, it will be called a Kunstenroman. And the third term that you need to keep in mind is what is eponymous novel. Eponymous novel is a novel which is based on the name of the character or a center figure. The name of the novel is directly put forward as being the name of the character itself. Like in David Copperfield we have David, in Oliver Twist we have Oliver, and in Jane Eyre we have Jane Eyre. These are our protagonists whose name has been adapted as a name of the. In the novel David Copperfield, we have the first person narrative as our young David, who is looking back on his life and he's telling us a story about his life. He tells us that when he was 6 months old, his father passed away, and it was his mother and his devoted housekeeper, Clara Peggotty, who looks after him, and they were having a very happy life. All of a sudden one day, David is asked by mother to go with Mrs. Peggotty to her countryside house of Mr. Peggotty, where he meets young Hem and young Emily. They become friends and he was having a good time there. But when he returns back to the reality and to his house, he finds that there is a young man over there whom he has to call father. His mother has married Mr. Mudstone and now he has to live a life with them. Soon we see how the situations are changing for our young David, as in the same day when he returns in the evening, Mr. Mudstone's sister comes to the house and she is like a very dominating character and she takes over everything and she is the one now who will be taking care of the house. As the novel progresses, we have an incident where David's father, he takes him to his bedroom to beat him up, and David just rescues over there by biting his hand. This event doesn't end there. There is consequences for it, as David, being 8 years old, is sent to the boarding house where he meets two of his friends. Among one of them is Mr. Stiff. In second semester, David receives a letter stating that her mother has passed away by giving birth to a baby child who later on also perishes. David has to leave his schooling and return back to his house to Mr. Mudstone. Over there, he is being neglected and ignored by his stepfather, and to take care he has been sent to Mrs. Mustone wine bottling factory, where he starts his journey alone. We see how now David, as being a child, is thrown out in the world by himself, and he has to take care of himself and survive over there. When he reaches over there, he sees he's been taken care by two very generous people, cared by Mr. and Mrs. Micabro. These two generous couple look after David, they give food and shelter to him. But Mr. Micabro seems to be very bad in the financial, and he's always in debt. Due to not be able to pay his debt back, he's been sent to the debtor's prisoner, and David on his foot has to start his journey again. He runs away from there to his only living relative left, whose name is Miss Betsy Trotwood. Miss Betsy Trotwood is one of the very independent lady who lives with a boarder named Mr. Dick. When David he reaches over there, on the advice of Mr. Dick, Miss Betsy Trotwood takes David under her shelter. She sent David to a school of Dr. Strong. Over there, he lives in the boarding of Mr. Wickfield and Agnes, and he develops a very friendly bond with them. And there is another character, Uriah Heep, who is another part of boarder over there, who is always interested in people's business, and he doesn't know when to mind his own business. The novel progresses, and David is now being educated, and he's not able to decide what to do in his life, what to take up. He goes to Yarmouth to Mr. Peggotty to take advice from the man, and when he is going over there, he meets Mr. Stairford on his way. They both plan to go to Yarmouth, as Stairford is visiting his mother and Mr. David wants to visit Mr. Peggotty. When they reach over there, they come to know that little Emily and Ham are engaged now, and we see there's a likeness developing between Stairford and little Emily. When they come back, David starts his journey as a proctor, so-called lawyer, with Spenlow and Hawkins. Over there, he meets the Spenlow's daughter Dora, and David is just like having a love at the first sight. He falls in love, or you can say the infatuation of Dora's childish-like behavior. Soon, we have this complication coming in the life of David, as Spenlow refuses her daughter to be married to David, and David is working day and night hard to come up to the expectation so that he can marry Dora. And one evening, there is a carriage accident where Spenlow loses his life, and Dora goes away and started living with her relatives. As the journey progresses, Mr. Barkis is not keeping well. Mr. Barkis is husband of Mrs. Peggotty, and David finally decides to go back to Yarmouth as he wants to meet the person on his deathbed, and he holds a very generous place in David's heart. And David set forward for his journey to Yarmouth, and on his way, when he reaches over there, he comes to know that little Emily has run away with Stairford. The reason behind little Emily running with Stairford was that Stairford promised her to make her a lady, which in later of the novel we will come to know which was false and lies, and little Emily has again run away with a servant in a hope of a better life. And on the other side, we have Mr. Peggotty, who promises to bring her little niece back, and he sets forward for his journey to search for her. On the other side, we have Miss Betsy Trotwood, who has been financially ruined, and because of Uriah Heep, Mr. Peggotty also helps Miss Betsy Trotwood to come to know about the fact that it was Uriah Heep because of whom she has been facing the financial crisis. And with the evidence and proof, Uriah Heep has to pay back the money to Mrs. Betsy Trotwood, and the money is being restored. And on the other side, as Mr. Peggotty progresses, brings back Emily, and they're going to start afresh. Mrs. Micabro, Mr. Peggotty and Emily, they are going to leave everything and they're going to restart in Australia. In meanwhile, before all this incident take place, the incident of David losing Dora during her pregnancy, she's having miscarriage and she's not able to recover from the incident that has taken place. It has completely shattered the heart of Dora, and her health is going down and down, and finally she loses her life. And our David is very sad. Before he sets off his journey to Middle Europe, he's been given a letter by Emily, whom she wants to be delivered to Ham. On the seashore, we have a shipwreck, and the captain's body has been washed away, and he's drowned and he's dead now. And in saving the drowners, Ham loses his life, and it's David who discovers the body, and he comes to know that it is James Steerforth, and he's dead. And now David goes to Middle Europe. He stays over there 3 years and he tries to restore himself. And when he comes back, he finally marries the true love of his life, Agnes, who has always kept, a secret desire for David. And they are married and they live happily ever after. And David starts his journey, his final journey as being writer, and the novel ends over there. From this novel, we come to know that a child who has been deprived from everything, when given the opportunity, can discover and do excellent in his life. Thank you.